Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection Podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. My name is Amy Johnson, and I'm going to be your host for today's show as we break down all the latest news, analysis, and opinions about the Montreal Canadiens. And this is episode 339 of the Canadiens Connection Podcast. And as usual, without fail, my ride or die. I'm pleased to be joined in the studio by my co-host, who is the founder and president of Rocket Sports. His name is Rick Stevens. How are you doing today, sir?
On the Ides of March.
Oh, it
Beware
is.
the Ides of March.
Beware the fact that I still haven't recovered from losing an hour of sleep a week ago. That's the Ides of March.
Really?
I hate springing forward.
Uh-oh.
You shouldn't be forced to lose an hour of sleep.
Well,
I like fall. Gain an hour of sleep, love it. Lose an hour of sleep, hate it.
it was great growing up in Thunder Bay because, come in when the street lights come on, and they wouldn't come in until like 10 o'clock.
At night.
Yeah, it was great. Loved it.
I bet. Oh, but it means that spring's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Things are starting to pop out of the ground. The birds seem to be happy, and playoff hockey is on everyone's lips.
Just 1 month left. It's as we record, March 15th. The regular season ends for the Montreal Canadiens on April 16th at the Bell Center. The Canadiens facing the Carolina Hurricanes. So just 1 month left. And what does that mean for Habs fans and their playoff hopes?
Well, we're going to talk about that today because the title of today's episode is Habs Playoff Push, Breaking Down Their Postseason Odds. Before we talk about that, however, we have a lot to cover. Before that, in the first segment, it's where we always take a walk around what happened this past week with the Canadiens, their prospects, and the NHL. And so we're going to give you a brief recap of the 3 games that the Canadiens played on their Western road trip this week, get you some updates as far as the roster and injuries, take a look at some very high-achieving Canadiens prospects in the NCAA, catch up with what's going on with the Laval Rocket, including some maybe bad news, maybe. And then get you caught up on the latest NHL headlines that are of importance for this coming week. All of that leads up to our second segment, which is our big topics segment. This week, we are evaluating Habs postseason probabilities with just 1 month left in the season. So we're here. We've been hearing about them being in the mix after the trade deadline all season long, and the time has arrived, and they actually are, I guess you could say, in the mix. And so if they are going to make a push for the playoffs, what are their probabilities? Where do they stand? How do they stack up against everyone else who is in the same boat pushing to get one of those wild card spots? Who might they meet in the first round if they make it that far? And all sorts of analysis and thoughts about the potential playoff push that the Canadiens currently find themselves in here down the stretch.
Going to break down all the ramifications in the second segment.
That's right. And then finally, in our last segment, of course, it's when we want you to have your say. We'll be reading out our best comments that we received from our listeners and viewers last week about last week's Canadiens Connection question of the week. And if you'd like to get in on that and have your thoughts read to Habs fans all over the world, make your opinions heard, then you're going to want to be sure you get an answer in for this week's Canadiens Connection question of the week. And throughout the show, we are going to let you know how to do that because this is an interactive podcast. We always want to hear from you, questions, comments, feedback, and of course, answers and thoughts to the Canadiens Connection question of the week that we ask you each and every week. And so with that in mind,
Mm-hmm.
let's begin by going backwards a little bit, just for a minute. The Canadiens wrapped up their Western road trip this week with meh results. It was okay. Jacob Fowler versus Dustin Wolf last Saturday night was quite a goaltending matchup, and the score basically said that, with Calgary winning 1-0, a shutout for Dustin Wolf, but Jacob Fowler doing his part at the Canadiens' end of the ice as well.
Two rookie goaltenders, both were great. Dustin Wolf very much in the Calder conversation, along with Lane Hudson. He was great. The Canadiens just couldn't offer any run support for Jacob Fowler. Not his fault. And Calgary takes both, sweeps both games this season against Montreal.
Ooh, that's certainly something. The Canadiens then traveled to Vancouver to take on the Canucks, where this time they put that loss to Calgary in the rearview mirror and came up with a 4-2 victory over the Canucks. If anything, it was Juraj Slafkovský, have yourself a night.
Goal and 2 assists for Slafkovský. Canadiens with an early lead, 3-0 after the first 40 minutes. Pushed by Vancouver late to score twice. And then an empty net goal by Mike Matheson, and a win for Montreal.
Which I did not see in real time. I enjoy Western road trip games like Calgary that start at 7 o'clock Eastern. 10 o'clock on Tuesday night, 10:30 on Wednesday night. That's going to be a no for me, dog. So no, I didn't get to watch that one, unfortunately. And then if they liked scoring 4 goals on Tuesday night, they did it again on Wednesday night against Seattle. But this time, Seattle actually took them to extra minutes, and, well, I think that the Canadiens do not want to try to replicate that overtime performance again anytime soon.
No. Setting an NHL record, that's Brandon Montour scored the fastest overtime goal in NHL history. He got off the start before the puck was dropped, leaving Lane Hudson in the dust and scoring on Jacob Fowler. Again, Jacob Fowler was tremendous, especially in the first period. The Canadiens were awful. It was a bad first period. No shots on goal by the Canadiens in the last 13 minutes of the first period. And no shots on goal in the first 5 minutes of the second period. So that's 18 minutes consecutively without a shot on the Seattle goal. Man, they weren't good, but kind of lucked into staying in this game. It was kind of an up and down and all over kind of game. As far as luck, Juraj Slafkovský and that high stick goal that was ruled a good goal. Even Juraj Slafkovský, who was asked about it after the game, said he was 100% sure that that's the highest stick that he's ever used to score a goal in his entire life, which certainly says something. And two awful penalties. Xhekaj, David Savard. So 2 power play goals by Seattle in the third period, where they were able to tie it. And then, as we said, Montour 4 seconds into overtime, and scoring the game winner for Seattle.
Well, they did get some points, but as you said before the show, Rick, they also left some important points on the table. So that leaves them at 63 points on the season so far. And of course, we're going to talk about their standings in much more detail in the second segment when we really talk about the probabilities of them making the playoffs. As far as the roster is concerned, I found this to be a little curious. They sent Owen Beck back to Laval this week, recalled Joshua Waugh on an emergency basis because Patrick Linus still wasn't back. But then that emergency recall, turns into a regular recall because Laine then got healthy again
on Wednesday. Yeah.
So they only had 2 regular recalls remaining. They've burned one of those now.
Yeah, just one left now till the rest of to the remainder of the regular season.
That's right. So okay, maybe they just wanted to see how Joshua Waugh looked instead of Owen Beck. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that Joshua Waugh performed better than Owen Beck.
He didn't.
Owen Beck had been playing pretty darn well.
Yeah, Beck was good. Second line's pretty tough task for him, but he didn't look out of place. He was winning faceoffs, good on the forecheck. He was very physical, good in his own end. I think, it was a case of Marty St. Louis wanting to see more offense in his lineup, but he certainly didn't get that from Joshua Waugh. And I think that it's becoming clear. There's some runway left, but Joshua just isn't looking like an NHL player. He looks like he would be a very good AHL player, but his window on an NHL career is closing quick. He was invisible since the call-up.
Well, as we mentioned, Patrik Laine did return to the lineup for Wednesday's game versus Seattle after he had been out with flu symptoms that must have been a pretty nasty bout of the flu because he was out for a while.
Yeah, it's very curious, and lots of discussion, social media, lots of discussion by the French media, not really believing the story that he was out with the flu. He was out for far too many games, and he was seen hanging around his players. He was at social events, charity events, team events. So a little curious, but came back in that game on Wednesday against Seattle and scored one of his patented power play goals, his 15th goal of the season.
Someone who did miss Wednesday's game was Yoel Armia, missed the game against the Kraken with an upper body injury. However, Marty St. Louis says he should be back this weekend.
Yeah, should be able in Saturday night's lineup against the Panthers.
And sound the trumpets. This morning, Kaiden Guhle suited up for optional skate today. Just the first time that the young man joined his teammates since undergoing that surgery to repair his lacerated quadriceps. So really encouraging news to see that Kaiden Guhle. We saw last week he had skated by himself for the first time at Brassard, but today he went for optional skate.
Yeah, awfully nice, and it might be a while before he's back, but good to see him back with his teammates.
And guess who starts in net tonight?
Well, I would say that would be Sam Montembeault.
You would be right.
At the Bell Center,
yeah,
Sam gets the home games.
Saturday night. Against Sergei Bobrovsky. It's not that he does not have an easy matchup this time, so we'll see how he does. All right, let's before we move on to some other NHL news, let's just peek in on the Habs prospects.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world.
We are featuring 2 NCAA prospects this week because, I love how much good news surrounds a couple of the Habs' top college hockey prospects. Michael Hage being the first, playing for the University of Michigan. He has been named a finalist for Big Ten Freshman of the Year, and that's a pretty big deal.
It is. He's had a great season with the University of Michigan. 34 points in 33 games. That's on 13 goals and 21 assists. And so that qualifies him to be a finalist for that Big Ten Freshman of the Year.
And ho-hum, Jacob Fowler must be so tired of being named the Hockey East Goaltender of the Year. But that's what he's done for the second year in a row, earning the top goaltender in Hockey East this year.
And all he did this week was improve all of his stats. 7th shutout of the season, 24 wins, 5 losses, 2 losses in overtime. So it drops his goals against to 162. He improves his save percentage to 941, and those 7 shutouts. He's having another fabulous season.
If there has ever been a player in recent Habs prospect history in the last decade that I pray to the hockey gods transitions his game to pro hockey smoothly, it's Jacob Fowler. I really hope
smoothly and quickly,
I really hope that the success that he has had at the collegiate level translates to the pro level as well. I really do. As far as the Laval Rocket goes, they are continuing their good trajectory. A little bump in the road this week, but they got over it pretty quickly. Beating Rochester 2-1 last weekend. Then a very curious 5-2 loss to the Bridgeport Islanders on Wednesday this week.
Bridgeport's not a good team.
Bridgeport's not a good team. And Bridgeport just absolutely had their way with Laval. Pascal Vincent saying couldn't do that again to his team, and they didn't. Fortunately for Laval, they're on the road this weekend playing a very poor Utica Comets team who has struggled all season long, and they handily put Utica away last night 4-1 in their barn, and they'll rematch with them again tonight. So pretty good recovery for them. And I should mention Sean Farrell still scoring. I know you talked about him a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Florian Xhekaj had a couple of goals in that Friday night game as well. He's coming into his own the second half of this season.
Lots of buzz this week about Florian Xhekaj. 2 goals against Utica. He has set a new team record for most goals by a rookie. Chris G got some audio, and he's Pascal Vincent says what Florian Xhekaj is doing is really impressive. Beyond the goals, his contribution to the penalty kill. At the beginning of the season, he was a guy we weren't sure if we wanted to keep. We had the option to send him to the juniors, and I've been very impressed by him. So interesting admission there, and fortunately, the correct decision was made.
Absolutely. I'm teased at the top of the show that there might be some bad news for Laval. Well, defenseman David Reinbacher still suffering from that lower body injury. We mentioned it last week that he was just listed as day-to-day, but still out of the lineup. He did travel with the team this weekend, but he did not play on Friday night. And according to Chris G's reporting from Pascal Vincent, Reinbacher will not play on Saturday either. And I think alarm bells might be starting to go off for some people.
So he missed his 3rd straight game on Friday, won't play. That'll be 4 games. Hasn't skated, hasn't practiced with the team. And yes, it is concerning. Anthony Marcotte, the Rocket broadcaster, says this isn't load management. This isn't normal return to play protocol, that something's up. And we know that he had that left knee surgery, and there's a lot of concern that it's his knee that's giving him some problems. From Chris G, our own Chris G, Pascal Vincent says, there's no panic. We're following the process that's been given to us. Okay, so the Canadiens are dictating this. In terms of David Reinbacher, he's looking forward to play. He's going to practice tomorrow. We're just really making sure and really being prudent.
Okay. We'll see how that goes, and we'll see if he's not playing. We know that on Saturday night, so we'll see if he plays in their next game, which isn't until next Wednesday. The Rocket did sign a forward to a PTO, a professional tryout, this week, and that is forward Will Dineen.
Yeah, this is we'll see this as players have completed their season in the NCAA. Those not going on to the playoffs, they will see some signings, and in this case, it's Will Dineen was signed to the PTO. He has played for Yale for the past 4 seasons. He was in fact the captain of Yale University this past season. 6 goals, 12 assists for 18 points in 30 games. He is the son of, you may have heard of, Kevin Dineen. Kevin Dineen, born in Quebec City, had a very long, almost 1,200 game NHL career. Mostly, I remember him with Hartford, the Hartford Whalers. But he went on to play with Philadelphia, was the captain of the Flyers, captain with the Whalers, captain in Carolina. So you'd expect that this is a guy who, from his dad, has some leadership ability, and certainly Will being a captain this past year with Yale would suggest that, and adding him to the Rocket roster.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and his dad was recently, up until this season or last season, was the head coach for the Utica Comets for a while.
That's right.
And so obviously his dad would have some great insight on being competitive, not only in the AHL, but in today's North Division as well. So
we'll await his debut with the Laval Rocket.
And so that leaves the Rockets sitting with 79 points. They are still, despite that little hiccup on Wednesday night, they're still in the top spot in the North Division and number 1 overall in the AHL as their journey to the playoffs continues. And Trois-Rivières has continued their success as well. They won all but one of their 4 games this week, and that one they lost 1 game to Worcester in the shootout, but then beat Worcester and then won their next 2 games after that. So they are sitting at 2nd overall in the ECHL, doing very well this year as well.
Points in all of their games this week, as you said, and a win in Reading, a 5-3 win, gives them they've clinched the spot. They've qualified already for the Kelly Cup playoffs.
All right, then.
So there's going to be playoff hockey in Trois-Rivières.
Oh, well, that's pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's just take a quick jaunt around the NHL for some headlines there. It's that time of year. We have reached mid-March, and that means all of the hockey brass will be in Palm Beach, Florida for the GM meetings that will run from Monday to Wednesday this week. Always an interesting time of year for us to kind of get to see the topics that the GMs are going to discuss, potential changes coming for upcoming seasons. And Pierre LeBrun, even, Rick, had some insight on one of the things that the GMs could be discussing this week.
Yeah, schedules have to be worked out with the NHLPA, but there's been a lot of talk about how compressed next year's schedule is going to be. Mm-hmm. They expect more back-to-backs, more, 3 games in 4 nights kind of thing. The schedule's expected to open on October 7th and end on June 22nd. And in the middle there, they have to, there's the Olympics, and the Olympic break is going to be longer than the Four Nations tournament this past week. But there's also supposed to be an all-star game in Long Island, and there's some discussion about maybe scrapping it, although they don't want to, hurt the Islanders' chance of hosting the All-Star game. So there's lots to be worked out for next season and beyond.
And I know LeBrun has been one of his platforms for a number of seasons has been get the hockey season started sooner so that it's not running so late into the summer. And I did see him this week say that the possibility of maybe starting the regular season by the end of September could be on the table for the following season, the 2026-27 season. So we'll see if anything comes of that. Moving on, The Athletic this week put out their NHL goalie tandem power rankings.
Yeah.
Wonder how the Canadiens fared in that.
Yeah, this is Jesse Granger, who follows goaltenders, and he's set up an evaluation of all 32 teams, not necessarily best goaltenders, but the best tandems in the league, and has set up this power ranking. I don't think anybody's going to argue with the Winnipeg Jets first in the power rankings in terms of a goalie tandem, Connor Hellebuck, Eric Comrie. Maybe a surprise, Anaheim Ducks, number 2, John Gibson and Lucas Dostal, and much of that is coming from Dostal, who's a great young goalie. The Rangers with Shesterkin and Quick in 3rd. The Capitals, Charlie Lindgren, another great season with Logan Thompson taking the lead there. The Leafs with Stolars and Joseph Wall have been good at number 5. Vasilevsky, and to a lesser extent, Jonas Johansson, give Tampa at number 6 position. Dallas Stars, I like Jake Ottinger with Casey DeSmith. Remember him? Actually, DeSmith has had a very good season. Dallas Stars have the 7th best goalie tandem. Florida, number 8 with Bobrovsky and Vanacek. Markstrom and Jake Allen for the Devils in 9, and the Colorado Avalanche, who just tossed out their entire goalie department and brought in a whole new one, number 10. The Canadiens, I guess a decent ranking at number 12, kind of mid-pack, and some of that attributable to Sam Ondemo, who's taken the load, but as acknowledged in the article by Jesse, a real pleasant surprise after the switch was made from Primo to Jakob Dobish. He's had limited starts, but he has been terrific. And there's also mention in the article, I'm not sure if this factored into his rankings and all, but he talked about the spectacular sophomore season for Jacob Fowler. So with Fowler and maybe Dobish in the future, the Canadiens are poised to move up those power rankings over the next few years.
That would be tremendous. Last but not least, just a little note from the New Jersey Devils. We were actually just talking about how Kevin Dineen was recently the head coach of the Utica Comets. That is now not his position anymore, but the gentleman who is leading the Utica Comets in terms of their GM traded their 24-year-old defenseman, Will McKinnon, to the Cleveland Monsters this week in exchange for future considerations.
He did. But
it wasn't just any player that he traded.
Yeah. It isn't because Laval just played Utica that we're talking about this. This is kind of a very unique situation where the general manager of the Utica Comets is that defenseman, Will McKinnon's dad. So dad traded son to Cleveland for future considerations, which, as we know, usually means nothing. It's just kind of a quirk, I guess, a cute story. I think it's kind of fun. And there was some maybe criticism or at least, a raising of an eyebrow. Why would you do this? With Father's Day coming up and all of that. I was fascinated by Patrick Williams. We go to Patrick Williams for all things AHL. And his comment was quite interesting. There was an article in the, which you raised and read in the New York Post saying how bizarre this was. And Patrick says, nothing bizarre at all.
That's right.
It gives a player approaching his mid-20s a chance to go to a playoff-bound team. So dad giving his son a chance to go play in the playoffs.
And it's something that we see quite often at the AHL level, particularly this time of year. The AHL trade deadline was still in effect this week. And so, yeah, while it may look like I think the headline of the post was, dad trades son for nothing, which makes it sound terrible. But as Patrick so eloquently stated, no, dad traded son to have an opportunity to go contend for a Calder Cup, and that's pretty fun.
And he added that most deals at this time of the year can be for future considerations, so that's not at all unusual.
That's right. All right, we are going to take our first break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. We're going to hear a new incentive for all of our listeners for a newer game and app that our friends over at DraftKings are now offering, which you might want to get in on in its early stages. And then when we come back, we are evaluating the Habs postseason probabilities with just 1 month left in the season. How do they stack up against their competition? Can they do it? Can they make it? Can they do anything if they get there? Well, we're going to talk about all of that right after this. So stick with us. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
Hey, basketball fans, are you ready to win some real money? Check out Pick 6 from DraftKings. When it comes to basketball payouts, DraftKings Pick 6 dunks on its rivals, including Prize Picks. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat, like points, rebounds, three-pointers, and more. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6 and cash in your basketball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
And welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. Once again, my name is Amy Johnson. If you'd like to follow me on social media, you can find me over on X at Flyers Rule. And of course, with me here in the studio, our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. You want to be sure you're following him on social media as well, because his account is kind of the master account for everything that we do here at Rocket Sports. So anything that we put out for content, any news that we put out about the Canadiens or the prospects, anything, it comes from his account, and you'll find that at Rocket Sports. You're also more than welcome to follow this podcast on social media at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And don't forget, if you haven't done so already, if you're enjoying this show, don't forget to subscribe to it. Just tap subscribe on your podcast player, or if you're watching on YouTube, be sure you subscribe there as well. All right. Canadiens general manager Kent Hughes listened to his team, apparently. He's going all in on making them a push for the playoffs this season. I think there were a lot of Habs fans for which this was music to their ears, because certainly the impatience around the rebuild is starting to fester a little bit. Mm-hmm. That's not to say that the decision that Kent Hughes made to kind of stand pat at the trade deadline doesn't come with some consequences, because he really left some valuable assets on the table that could have helped propel the rebuild. But at this point, it is what it is. So the Canadiens then went on their Western road trip, only picking up half of the points available, 3 out of 6 available points. So that leaves them with just 17 games left in the season. Do they have a legitimate chance to make the playoffs, given how tight the wild card race is? And I guess the question that we then naturally ask after that is whether they get in or not. Have they achieved the goal that they set out for themselves as an organization at the beginning of the season. So lots to talk about today.
So let's answer that first question. That last question first. Have they achieved their primary goal, or at least set the context for it? And to do that, we have to go back to the golf tournament. It was there that the Canadiens brass, everybody from owner Jeff Molson and Kent Hughes. But we're going to play a clip from Jeff Gordon talking about the Canadiens' primary objective for the season.
Well, I mean, of course, that's the biggest question coming in, what we're going to be like. I think, we talked about at the end of the season a lot about the phrase we used is in the mix. That's where we want to be. But I'm not going to put it past this team, to do that. I know the players in that room feel really confident about their team and what we can do this year. So, no, I think that as the season progresses and it gets, after the trade deadline, we're still in there, playing meaningful games, competing, for a spot. I think that'll be important for our group, the evolution. We've had a few years, obviously, where, we've picked, 5 a couple times here first. So it'll be nice to see if we can move it along and like I said, as the season goes along, we get into April, that we're playing games that really, really matter.
So a lot there, but he's very clear, I think. And the phrase "in the mix" has been tossed around, and I think back when I hear that clip, I think of it was one of our listeners on X responded to that very early in the season, saying, no one ever said in the mix. It's just media. It's all made up by the media, and you're causing trouble and all this kind of stuff.
I think even the following week on the podcast, we put together a complete compilation
montage,
of all of the times at the golf tournament that people had said in the mix.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so it definitely was, and listen, it was a phrase that was purposely vague in the mix. It didn't set the goal of making the playoffs, or as the reporter asked, how many points does that mean? And it was purposely vague. It was focus group tested, but Jeff Gordon went on to kind of define what it meant. He says this is the phrase we're supposed to be using this season as our motto. But to define it, he said after the trade deadline, we want to be playing meaningful games. We don't want to be playing for a high draft pick anymore. We want to be playing meaningful games. And then he went on to say, and in April, we want to be playing games that matter. Now, we're not to April yet, and it's yet to be seen whether the Canadiens will be in or out at that stage. And maybe that's just kind of splitting hairs, because right now they are playing meaningful games. So I would say after the trade deadline, I would say that particular objective has been met.
I think so. And I think people need to understand a significant stepping stone in the length of the rebuild, that they set themselves an objective at the beginning of the season. Management did, and they seem to have it. They seem to be on the precipice of achieving that. And so if you can start to get to a point where goals are set at the beginning of a season and your team can come through with meeting them by the end of the season, you're going to start those wins, those little wins are going to start to compound into bigger wins.
Now, the balance of that is to help achieve their objective. Kent Hughes, as you said earlier, he made no moves. He wasn't a buyer. He wasn't a seller. And I don't think anyone expected that. Probably not even the team itself, especially with 5 pending unrestricted free agents. For Kent Hughes to stand pat at the trade deadline, that was not expected, but he challenged the team to tell him what to do, and they said they wanted to stay together and try to push for a playoff spot.
So they currently, 65 games into the season, sit with a 31-27-7 record that is good enough for 63 points. They are currently 5th in the Atlantic Division, 19th overall in the NHL, and puts them one of 7 teams in the Eastern Conference who are in the race for a wild card spot.
Yeah, and for fans that may not be familiar with the NHL playoff system, 2 teams will claim a wild card spot. We say that 7 teams are in that wild card race. They're the teams that are above a 500 points percentage, and namely those teams are the Ottawa Senators, Columbus Blue Jackets, New York Rangers, Montreal Canadiens, Detroit Red Wings, Boston Bruins, and New York Islanders. And that's in descending order as of today in terms of points, with the Senators and Columbus Blue Jackets right now in holding those 2 wild card spots with 75 points and 70 points respectively. Canadiens 69 points as we speak.
That is true. So two teams will claim that wild card spot. Montreal right now on the outside looking in. So the one thing that we should note is that currently, so Ottawa's sitting in that top wild card spot with 75 points. Columbus is the second one right now who is in with 70 points, but just under them in third place is the New York Rangers with 70 points as well, and Montreal's just 1 point behind that. So we need to obviously start factoring in the tiebreaker situation.
And the first tiebreaker is regulation wins. So let's look at that. The Montreal Canadiens currently have 22 regulation wins. They benefited quite a bit from the loser point, if you want to call it that, or wins in overtime or the shootout. Mm-hmm. They currently have 22 regulation wins. Unfortunately, Columbus, Detroit, Boston, and the New York Islanders all have 23 regulation wins. Ottawa has 26 regulation wins, and the New York Rangers have 29. So Montreal is not catching the Rangers, maybe not even the Senators in terms of regulation wins. So that's, if you're balancing out and trying to figure out, calculate the probability for the postseason, this is a big factor, and this is a factor that is going to work against Montreal. Mm-hmm. They're on the bottom when it comes to regulation wins at time of recording.
Now, another factor that most analysts will look at when trying to predict who could make the playoffs, when trying to assess the likelihood of a team to make the postseason based off of their performance, is goal differential. And this is a spot where Montreal is hurting.
If you've listened to this podcast for a number of years, you'll know this is something I harp on constantly, that goal differential is very important. It's a simple statistics. It takes the goals for minus the goals against, and that it's almost a predictor of postseason. If you line people up by their goal differential, you can almost it almost matches perfectly with the teams in the playoffs. And we just talked about that at when we were doing our preseason projections, how important it was for the Canadiens to dramatically improve their goal differential. Right now, Ottawa, most of these teams are in the minus in terms of goal differential. That is, they've given up more goals than they've scored. Ottawa, the only team at a +6. Columbus is even. And then everybody else is in the minus. The Rangers -2, Islanders -19, the Red Wings -20, the Canadiens -21, and only the Boston Bruins are worse than the Canadiens at a -30 in terms of goal differential.
Well, that means they need to tighten up that statistic a bit in the next 17 games. Okay, so the next thing we look at in terms of evaluation is strength of schedule. And we've been giving you strength of schedule statistics since just after New Year's, basically, kind of giving you an idea of how easy or difficult the Canadiens' remaining games on their schedule will be. And they've had some favorable numbers, but that might change a little bit now, right?
Yeah, remember just before the trade deadline, we were talking about the Canadiens in terms of strength of schedule, that they were down in the bottom. That means that they had the easiest remaining schedule when we're maybe 30 games out or thereabouts. They had one of the easiest schedule in the league. They've mowed through a lot of their easy teams, if you want to call it that. This strength of schedule put together by the folks at tankathon.com. Of those 7 teams, the team with the most difficult schedule is the Detroit Red Wings. And not only is Detroit have the most difficult schedule of those 7 teams that we're talking about in terms of those that have a chance, they're in that competition for the wild card spot. Detroit has the most challenging schedule of any team in the NHL. They rank first in terms of strength of schedule by Tankathon. The Islanders 5th, Columbus 8th, the Rangers 10th, Canadiens mid-pack in the league at 14th, Ottawa a fairly easy schedule at 25th, Boston 29th. So think of that with Ottawa holding on to that position and with the lead that they have on Montreal currently of 6 points, and they have a relatively easy schedule to boot for their remaining 17 games.
All right. Well, you know that our sponsor here on the show is DraftKings. So, of course, we like to talk about odds. Betting odds is one thing. Playoff odds is another, courtesy of MoneyPuck.com. So what are the current playoff odds, the chance of making the playoffs, the percentage chance of making the playoffs? Have the Canadiens improved in their standing there?
Canadiens at 12.8% of making the playoffs, close to 13. So that's 87% chance that they won't be making the playoffs. They're currently on pace for an 85-point season. Let's compare and see where that ranks in terms of those 7 teams that we're talking about. Ottawa Senators are almost assured a playoff spot. They have a 93.8% chance of making the playoffs. They're on pace for a 96-point season, and we said it was going to take a mid-90s tally to get to the postseason. The Rangers, they're close to 60% chance of making the playoffs, 58.4. They're on pace for a 90-point season. Columbus Blue Jackets, then the probability drops dramatically. Columbus is at 17.1%, 86-point pace. The Islanders, 13.4%, 85-point pace. Montreal, as I said, 12.8% chance of making the playoffs, 85-point pace. Detroit, just 6.4% chance of making the playoffs. And the Bruins, let's say this with glee, 4.1% chance of making the playoffs, and they're on track for an 83-point season.
So, if the Canadiens are going to make a playoff based off of just those playoff odds and everything else that we just discussed, whether it's the strength of schedule, the goal differential, the tiebreaker regulation win situation, the Canadiens have some work cut out for them. This is not a sure thing. They cannot coast if they think that they're going to make this happen, and the odds might not even be in their favor, depending on what everybody else does as well. So it's not. It's going to be exciting to watch to see if they could do it. So what has the last month or so, the Canadiens have had a favorable strength of schedule for the remainder of the season, and as Rick said, they just got done playing a bunch of their easier opponents. And so, what is the big thing that has changed that's now moved them up to kind of middle of the league in terms of strength of schedule? Well, they have 8 games left this month. They play 9 in April, where they'll play mostly at home. But the big thing for me in the terms of their remaining games is they're playing Florida tonight. And then they will play Florida again, and they will play Florida again one more time before the end of the season. They play the Panthers a ton in these last 17 games.
They do, and there's when you analyze the schedule, there's some good news and some bad news. Finishing April with a home heavy schedule, 6 games at home, 3 away. That's great news. They have 2 back-to-backs in April. And the Canadiens have been better this season in terms of back-to-backs. But the back-to-back in this case occurs within the same week. Saturday, Sunday, April 5th and 6th, home against Philly, on the road the next day, the Sunday, against Nashville. And then Friday night, they play Friday, Saturday, both on the road. Ottawa on the road on Friday, and Toronto on Saturday. That's the 11th and 12th of April. So I'd say that's going to be a really, really tough week for them. In this starting, how about this week? This isn't going to be an easy week either. This is one of the Florida games as we record ahead of the Canadiens Panthers at the Bell Center. Then they play Ottawa at home, and Ottawa's been very good. The Islanders, one of those group of 7 that they're fighting against, and then Colorado at home.
Oh, it's just the Avalanche.
Yeah, next Saturday night. And then they go on a 4-game road trip, and that road trip is 4 games in 6 days. St. Louis, Philadelphia, Carolina, and the Panthers. And the game in Sunrise, Florida is a 1 p.m. start.
On a Sunday.
On a Sunday. So that's 4 games in, let's say, 5.5 days. So like I've been saying, there's some good news in the schedule. There's some really challenging bits of the schedule yet to come. There are things going against the Canadiens for sure, and that's why you find the probability folks just down at 12.8% chance of making the playoffs, because there's some big hurdles in these 17 games.
But let's have some fun for just a minute, and let's say they clear those hurdles and they make it to the first round of the playoffs. Who might they meet up with in the first round? Just the Washington Capitals. Yikes! Yeah, that could be a potential first round matchup for the Canadiens. And I mean, you're looking at a team that Canadiens right now have 63 points. The Capitals right now have 94 points. The goal differential that Rick just talked about, the Canadiens currently have a minus 21 goal differential. The Capitals have a plus 65 goal differential. I mean, I know we've complained before about how the playoffs are set up, but this would be an enormous matchup. Talk about clearing hurdles. That would be a big task.
So, the goal differential, just to reinforce that, there's a spread of 86 goals that the Capitals are ahead. Having said that, the season series, the Capitals they lead the season series 2-1. First game was on Halloween night in DC. The Canadiens were actually ahead in this game. It was Primo versus Charlie Lindgren. Capitals scored 3 times in the third period and took this game 6-3. They met again the first week of December 7th in Montreal. Washington with a 4-2 win. Habs with an early lead, 2-0 lead in the first. Capitals score 3 goals in the third. Where have I heard that before? And then the Canadiens on January the 10th, they squeak out a 3-2 win in overtime. Nick Suzuki scoring the game winner in overtime. But Canadiens fans, they're going to remind us for sure. Don't forget 2010. They'll talk about Yaroslav Halak. That wasn't the story. It was Kirk Muller that basically took over the head coaching reins. Jacques Martin was out of ideas, and Kirk Muller said, "I've got something here. Let's just pile up all the players in front of Halak like cordwood, play defense, and score all our goals on the power play." And that worked for a couple of, including against the Washington Capitals, which they came back and won 4-3 and had some success. And I know you're going to remind everybody that success ended
in the conference final when the Philadelphia Flyers beat them.
Yeah, and that was basically shutting down the Canadiens' power play. So, yeah. Some good, some bad, some fun, some projections. We're here to give you the all the facts, the truth. So latch on to whichever ones you want, and make your own bets. Make your own probability chart. But it means, I think, that the Canadiens are going to be playing meaningful games in March and maybe games that matter in April, as Jeff Gordon's quote went.
And I think that's the important point, is even if they don't clear all those hurdles and make it into the playoffs, regardless, they are going to be playing meaningful games in March and possibly in April, as well as they fight to try to get into a playoff position. So whether or not they actually succeed in doing it, the goal will have been met, that they will be playing meaningful games where they're actually fighting for something. So with all that in mind, it's time for the Canadiens Connection question of the week. This is the segment where every week we ask you a question. We want you to send us your replies, and then we will select the best of them and read them on next week's show. So this week we are asking you, what's your confidence level like? What is your confidence level in Montreal's ability to close the gap in the wild card race? Do you think they can do it? Do you think they don't stand a chance in heck? Do you think that you're somewhere in the middle? What do you feel?
Do you believe in underdogs?
Do you believe in underdogs? What is your confidence level in Montreal's ability to close the gap in the wild card race? So how can you send us your answer? Well, you could text it to us on our Rocket Sports text line. That's 585-3-ROCKET, 585-3-ROCKET. You could also leave us a comment on YouTube. The easiest way to find our YouTube channel to do that is just go to InsideTheCanadiens.com. It's Canadians with an E, of course, InsideTheCanadiens.com. And leave us a comment on YouTube. You can also send us an email, hello@rocketsportsmedia.com, or just hit us up on social media with a reply or a DM at Habs Connection on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. All right, we are going to take our final break now on the Canadiens Connection podcast. And up next, what are we doing? Well, we've got all of the best replies that we got from you for last week's Canadiens Connection question of the week, and we are going to read those for you and see if you agree with them or not right after this. So stay with us. You're listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Hey, basketball fans, are you ready to win some real money? Check out Pick 6 from DraftKings. When it comes to basketball payouts, DraftKings Pick 6 dunks on its rivals, including Prize Picks. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat, like points, rebounds, three-pointers, and more. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6 and cash in your basketball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
And welcome back to episode 339 of the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio. Don't forget, follow us on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Habs Connection. If you ever miss an episode, just keep CanadiensConnection.fm handy. You can bookmark that. That's where we keep our full archive. And so you can always go back and listen to an episode that you might have missed. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the show. Leave us a review if you're listening on a podcast platform that allows you to do that. And very importantly, if you can share this episode to your social media followers, that would be really helpful for us as well. And we would greatly appreciate that. All right. So don't forget, we want to hear from you about this week's Canadiens Connection question of the week. What is your confidence level in Montreal's ability to close the gap in the wild card race? Do you think they can do it? Do you think they can't? Tell us why. Show your work and send in those responses so that we can pick the best ones, and maybe yours will be read next week on the show in this segment. Because right now we have the best responses to last week's question of the week, which was, do you agree with Kent Hughes' decision to stand pat at the trade deadline, or should he have made a move? We had, as we kind of predicted, responses to this kind of ran the gamut all over the board. And first, Rick, I know you have a response that you got on our Substack.
Love the people who join the conversation on Substack. Look for Rocket Sports on Substack, and you can join there too. This comes from our dear friend Dino in the Ottawa-Gatineau region. Salubien, Rick. Kent Hughes made the right call, my friend. Reward the players. Now it's their turn to return the favor for in trusting in them. See what happens next. Trading away Armia, Savard, there's no game changer coming back. Just pocket change. Going to be tough. Parity for sure. See how CH20, that would be Yaroslav Kovsky and company, respond now that the country club atmosphere has been lifted. Results desired. Thanks for all you, Amy and Chris and your associates do. P.S. We need a miracle from the hockey gods. We got to run the table now, just about. The Sens look good. Rangers haven't made their run yet. Columbus, Detroit, question mark. Boston cleaned house, but are still dangerous. The Islanders, question mark. I think he's got all 7 teams that we were talking about.
I think he pre-read the show notes. I think he's what he did. He
says, where does this leave us? Behind the 8 ball? Let's see what happens next. All Habs always, your friend, Dino. Dino, thanks so much for that.
Very, very good. Our friend Center Heist 7948 chimed in as well. This was over on YouTube. He says, hello, Amy and Rick. Great show. I believe Hughes may have done the right thing standing pat. Not messing with the team chemistry was probably the right thing to do because I don't think we need any more draft picks at this point. I was, however, disappointed that Ottawa managed to get Dylan Cousins. I'm guessing the Sabres were asking for pieces that Hughes didn't want to give up. It's a hard pill to swallow seeing Cousins go to Ottawa, but I do believe this management knows the course they wanted to go and didn't want to just make a rash mistake move. I just wished we could have gotten a second line center. This team isn't making the playoffs in the condition they're in without any additions, but I don't think we're going to get anything we needed by trading Armia, Savard, or Dvorak. We don't need second rounders and less in this particular draft. We need some proven talent that are still young to add to this group. And I think Armia could be signed for a 2-year deal, less money, like Evans. He's still quite capable with what he brings, penalty killing and fourth line. Savard, 1 year at a time, if we keep him, but only as a 7th spot defenseman. I'm going to have to disagree with you there. Savard's got to go this year. He continues and says, but as much as I think Dvorak doesn't get any credit for the little things he does, I just can't see him back due to the type of team we're building speed-wise. But boy, oh boy, this summer we deserve a second-line center who actually has the talent for it. No more project players to overpay on. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much, Center Heiss, and keep up the great comments.
Great comments from both Center Heiss and Dino. Both of them mentioned that they don't want any more draft picks. We don't need second round picks. Just to play devil's advocate here and give you some more food for thought. I just brought up the list of NHLers, active NHLers, who were second round picks, and see if you recognize any of the obscure players on this list. We have Nikita Kucherov, Jason Robertson, Sebastian Aho. These are all players who were second round picks. Alex DeBrincat, Rope Hintz, our own Lane Hudson, Jordan Kyrou, Roman Yoshi, Ryan O'Reilly, Tyler Toffoli, William Karlsson, John Petarka. Okay, no, leave that off the list. Matthew Nees with Toronto, and you know that if you were listening to us during that draft, that I was begging the Canadiens to draft Matthew Nees. So a little bit of talent there from the second round, and we know that there were trades on the table for Savard, for Armia, trades on the table last season that were left there for Savard that include second round picks and maybe a third round this season. If we looked at third round, Braden Point, Jake Gensel, Brad Marchand, Adam Fox was a third round pick, Vincent Trocheck, Christopher Letang, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Shane Gostisbehere. The list goes on and on. Alex Killorn, who was also a third round pick. So, hopefully that puts in context and you want to give some thought whether you think that the Canadiens should have picked up some extra picks or whether they could have bundled those together to get that second line center that they're going to have to be pursuing in the summer. We love hearing from our loyal Canadiens listeners, but there's folks we haven't heard from before, and we love hearing from them too. One of those was on YouTube. It's at Paul Giardetta, 1579. Paul says, I would have traded Armia and Savard. The Doc injury made it difficult to trade Dvorak. So differing view there, and we thank Paul for that.
Thank you, Paul Giardetti.
Randy Lavoie, 6196. Randy said, I'd like to see Oliver Kapanen join Laval Rocket for their long playoff run. You're going to get your wish because Kent Hughes said Oliver Kapanen is on his way. Also, Jacob Fowler would benefit from some AHL exposure. I expect Boston College is going to be have a bit of a playoff run for themselves. And he says, so Jacob Fowler would fit in smoothly next year. I love your podcast, Amy and Rick. All the best from Randy, and thank you for your comment.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. And wrapping up with another one of our frequent commenters, She26 says, oh man, when the show started and you guys played the audio of crickets, it came through my phone so clear I literally put it down to look to see if we had crickets in the house. I'm a little late on commenting on the anthem booing that's been going on since the Four Nations, but I wish it would stop. I wish it would just stop already. My dad's in the military and he finds it disgusting on both sides. It really upsets him, and it makes me feel bad and sad. I hope everyone will stop sooner than later. Booing an anthem should not have to do with politicians, no matter how misguided fans are. You would think that they would understand this by now. I'm so happy that Jake...
I like that, by the way.
Yes.
It refocuses back to the military and fallen heroes and current heroes, and it's thank you for saying that, She 26.
Absolutely, and thank your dad for his service, please. I believe she's north of the border. I believe she and her family are Canadian, and so thank your dad for his service and your family. She goes on to say, "I'm so happy that Jake Evans didn't leave. I do think that Hughes could have offered him 3 years, though." Or 3 million. Sorry, yeah. 3 million. Go Laval. Amazing job they're doing, and I'm loving it. I would love to see them win this year. That would be awesome. The decision for Kent Hughes to do nothing, I really wish he would have done something, like anything. The comments from the guys on the team all sounded the same, almost robotic. Listening to what you guys had to say throughout that segment, I couldn't agree more. Question of the week is, no, she didn't agree, but I guess my already noted opinion from the last segment covered that. I'm on March break now. Yay. Congratulations to you. She says, being in school, college, and taking psychology is way harder than I thought. So yeah, I'm so happy to have a week off, and I'm going to have some fun. Thank you to both of you, as usual, for having the most sane podcast on all of YouTube, and always a safe place to have my own opinions without feeling like they are not valid. Thank you very much for such kind words. You and all of our listeners and viewers are welcome here. And yes, it is a safe place to have opinions of any kind, as long as they are all delivered respectfully and politely and courteously, and keep everyone, everyone has an opinion. So just be nice about it. And this is a safe place for people to air those kinds of opinions.
Your opinions are definitely valid.
That's
Thank you.
Right. So now the real work begins for the Canadiens. Let's see how they do. Saturday night in Montreal against the Florida Panthers. Tuesday night in Montreal against the Ottawa Senators. That is a must win for them, for sure. And then Thursday in New York on Long Island to play the Islanders. That's a 7:30 p.m. start. So a tough task against Florida, and then 2 games against teams that they are fighting with to get that wild card spot. So it's an important week for the Montreal Canadiens. Let's hope they don't imbibe in too much green beer on Monday. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. If you are celebrating, don't party too hard. Have some fun. And then be sure to come back next Saturday, March 22nd, for the next episode of the Canadiens Connection podcast. We will be here. We'll break down all of the latest from the Habs and their prospects throughout the week, and hopefully we'll have some wins to talk about. Thank you so much for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.